Hey everybody,
Hello.
it's Jamie and Christine with Iowa Diabetes. Welcome back. It is December 1st. We have survived Thanksgiving. We're getting ready for Christmas.
Yep.
If you could see it in here, it looks like Black Friday hit Iowa Diabetes.
It did. We got some computer things going on.
Yes. So we've got some exciting stuff going on. There's always stuff happening here. But today we're here to talk with you guys about insulin.
Yep.
As a pharmacist and a diabetes educator, I love talking about diabetes medicines, especially insulin. So it is all about insulin. And I told Christine, I get to talk a lot today, but I am going to make you talk.
Well, and as a provider, I like my patients to know how to use insulin and use it properly so that it works the best for them. So we're going to tag team this a little bit here today.
Yeah, we want you to get the most benefit out of it. Throughout this conversation, it is going to be casual, so we want to make sure we're answering any or all of your questions. So drop a question in any of the chats. Even if you're not watching live, we will come back and answer it later. So first question for you guys is, what do you want to learn about insulin? Like we said, we're going to talk about it all day, every day with you, but we want to hear from you. What do you want to learn? So put it in the chat. We'll start answering those questions as they come along.
Yep.
Some interesting facts for you about insulin. It was first released in 1921, so it's over 100 years old.
And it was crazy that if you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes before then, I mean, the lifespan was so short.
Yeah, and treatment was starvation.
It was
so
terrible.
Starvation diets was standard of care before insulin. And insulin was developed by Banting and Best, and they have a great picture of it. I show it in some of my slides that I like to, and they tested it on this little dog. And I forgot the dog's name, but he was this little beagle type cute dog that they were testing it on. And it worked, and we were able to bring it to market. So it's huge, groundbreaking. The other interesting facts, your first insulin pump, now insulin pumps are like this.
Yeah.
Your first insulin pump was first developed in 1963.
And I feel now we're seeing more and more pumps and just helping with better ease the burden of diabetes in a lot of patients. So it's really interesting how far they've come.
And huge technology breakthroughs around pumps. Maybe we can do something on that to enlighten you. If you guys have questions, let us know about that. And then we also have insulin pens. And insulin pens are so convenient.
They really are.
And they first were developed in 1985. And now they're standard of care. We rarely see patients on vials and syringes. So thank you, Kathy, for giving us a question.
Hi, Kathy.
So I was told long-acting insulin does not have a peak, but you feel like it does for you. And I'll take this one to start. There are so many long-acting insulins. I think I have a picture of it in the slides. If you guys don't mind me, I'm going to bring the slide up and I'm going to show you a picture of it. But with all of the different long-acting insulins that are on the market, no, I took it out. Okay, I took the picture out. With all of the long-acting insulins that are on the market, you have Lantus, which is one of our older ones. Basaglar, which is very much similar to Lantus. Levemir. And then we also have NPH. And we also have our newer generation, which is going to be Toujeo and Tresiba. Lantus, Levemir, Basaglar, they act anywhere from 18 to 24 hours, and you actually get a little bit of a peak.
Yes, there is.
There is a peak, definitely with Levemir. The Toujeo and the Tresiba truly are once-a-day insulins. They both last between 36 to 42 hours in the body, and there is no peak with those.
And aren't those a little bit more considered weight neutral because you don't have as much of that peak?
Yeah, weight neutral. The other thing, when they studied those against some of the older insulins, less risk for lows. So if you're on something and you're feeling a peak, trying to see if your insurance will cover a Toujeo or a Tresiba may be a really good option because you might see less lows, less peaking because of them. And that's because of the more stability in that dosing.
And eventually there's going to be a weekly insulin
Absolutely.
that's going to be on market that actually doesn't have any of those peaks.
Yeah.
Keeps blood sugars very stable, and you only have to administer it once a week. So that's in the works.
Are you guys, and this is the side of Iowa diabetes I don't know as much about, are you guys studying that in type 1 or type 2 right now?
We are studying it in both.
Okay, so if you've got interest, I mean, there could be a study opportunity for you on that once weekly insulin.
Yeah, it's a really neat insulin.
That could be groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It could be just like some of the newer drugs that we just got to talk about with the Mounjaro or the tirzepatide. So really cool opportunities there. So great question. But we also have new insulins in terms of the fast-acting ones too. So traditional fast-acting or mealtime insulins, we've got Novolog and Humalog. They are great. Even older than that, we have Novolin R or Humalin R, regular insulin.
Yeah.
That goes in the body, and that's been around for quite a while. But it takes 30 minutes to take onset. And you're supposed to time it 30 minutes before you eat a meal.
For the older
one. Who knows when they're going to eat 30 minutes ahead of time.
Right.
I know it's chaotic in my life, and that would not happen. Novolog and Humalog, you have to dose 15 minutes before you eat in order to time it right so that the peak of when it's hitting is the peak of when your sugars are highest in your body.
And that's one of the things that I feel like most of my patients, even if they come into me on insulin, I never assume they know when to take the insulin, because that is one of the biggest things that I hear from patients. Oh, I thought I was supposed to take it after I eat. And then what you see is you get highs because it's not covering the meal. And then the food's out of your system, but the insulin is not, and then you get lows. So that is one of the biggest things education-wise I do with my patients, is making sure they're taking their insulin at the correct timing.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. Some patients or people, you just, maybe you have a really short lunch break.
Right.
Or you don't have that 10 to 15 minutes to wait. So are there some even faster ones on the market now?
And that's the fun thing. I like to try to say, we want to fit our treatment into your lifestyle. We don't want to dictate what your lifestyle absolutely has to be. These newer insulins are getting us closer to that. So Fiasp and Lumjev, those are the names of them. I can always type them in the chat later if you guys ever are wanting to talk with a provider about them. Those onset of actions are anywhere from 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. So you can sit down, eat a meal, when you've got that food right in front of you. So you've got Thanksgiving right on your plate. You go ahead, calculate your carbs or figure out what your dose is going to be, and go ahead and take that shot right then 2 minutes before you eat. And it is going to take effect really soon. There's another one that's just as fast too.
There is.
And that's an inhaled insulin. That one's called Afrezza. And that's just as fast too. You also take that one at mealtime. When you do those for mealtime, those sugars increase or the insulin increases as the sugars are rising. It's that fast.
And one thing I have noticed with the Afrezza is it's important to have a good baseline first, because unlike some of the, Fiasp or Lumjev, you're still going to have that onset of action about 3 hours or so. The Afrezza really is only for about an hour.
Yes.
And so it's really just going to cover that food and then come right back down. You don't get that additional coverage. So if you don't have that good basal rate down, I have seen some highs with it. So it's important to get that in a good spot first if you're thinking about switching to the Afrezza.
Yeah. And with the Afrezza as well, if you eat a fattier meal, fat's going to delay the absorption of some of those carbohydrates. And so you may also see a rise in the sugars a couple of hours later and have to take a second dose of that.
But less likely to have lows with that one. So even if you are like stacking, if you did that with regular insulin, you could go low later. With this one, you're actually able to redose after an hour if you're still running high. So that's a kind of a nice feature with that one.
Yeah. Are we, and I know we did an entire presentation just on this inhaled insulin. I think we did that in April or May. And there is a study again, also going on with that Afrezza as well, but in peds.
So Why does the body even need insulin?
Right?
What does insulin do?
Yeah, great question. So I do have a picture on this. I think this picture speaks 1,000 words. Let me bring it up for you guys. Make sure that you can see the most appropriate slide. I've got a lot of things in the background. And then bring it up. So insulin, I like to call it the key that gets sugar from the bloodstream into our blood or our body cells. So we eat sugar, we eat carbohydrates. Our body breaks them down into glucose that's floating around in our bloodstream. Insulin is that key or that hormone that then goes to our cells and says, hey, you need to go into the cells, because our cells then break down the sugar and create energy, also called ATP, and break down that and create energy so that we can move, feel good, have energy ourselves. If we don't have insulin, nothing's going into our muscles or our fat cells, and all that sugar is staying in the blood.
And what can happen with type 2 diabetes is those the sugars are constantly bombarding those cells. And the cells go, whoa, there's way too much sugar, always like hitting me up here. So they start to take away some of those insulin doors.
Yeah,
those
they
receptors.
take these locks away.
And that's what we call insulin resistance. Another thing can happen if the pancreas is always having to work on overload and have to release that insulin, it can start kind of kapooting out. Not making insulin like it should. So those are two factors that can cause someone with type 2 diabetes to require insulin. Now we know with type 1, those beta cells in the pancreas have been destroyed. That's what makes insulin, so it's required.
Absolutely.
So if you have type 2 diabetes, what are some things we can do to reverse some of that insulin resistance so that we don't need as much insulin?
Right. So we get these receptors back.
Yes.
And we get our little key and get more keys made. So there are medicines that we can use. There's medicines that we can use. Absolutely, things like that your doctor can use. Metformin, some of the newer medicines like our GLP-1s, Trulicity, Ozempic, and the big blockbuster drug of Mounjaro can help with that insulin sensitivity. But even before you go to some of those meds, if you're not a med person, we can increase how your body uses sugar with exercise.
Yes.
Key thing is exercise. The moving muscle doesn't need insulin. It needs that energy. It needs it immediately. So a moving or an active muscle can bypass that little lock, essentially.
And muscle uses sugar as its fuel. So the more you can increase muscle, you're increasing your metabolism, but you're also better utilizing those sugars so that the cells don't reduce those insulin receptors.
Yeah. And Kathy, great question. I love this question. So as we age, can you become resistant to insulin as a type 1? And the answer is yes. Yep. That can happen. And you can develop insulin resistance on top of having type 1 diabetes. It's not because you've been using insulin for so long. It's because of some of the same factors that Christine was talking about earlier. If you get a little bit of weight gain or your body just is not having those receptors on the cells anymore.
And we know that it can be harder to make muscle as we get older. I've talked about too the importance of collagen with that because it's one of the building blocks and we lose that as we age. So that could be another factor as well. If you're not building that lean muscle or you're losing that lean muscle, that's going to help make us a little bit more resistant to insulin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions, keep on asking them to us.
Well, here's another thing though. So let's say you have to be on insulin, but sometimes insulin can really be expensive.
Yes.
So, but there are programs out there that can really help.
Yeah. And so insulin, one, if you've got Medicare Part D, insulin costs are going to greatly reduce for you as of next year.
They're going to be
news. A max of $35 any phase of your year. So January 1st, every insulin for a 1 month supply is going to be that $35 if you've got a government Medicare Part D plan. Iowa, some states have passed laws that it's $35 within that state boundary. Iowa is not there yet. So if you live in Iowa and are watching that, we're working on it. Other ways are straight through the drug companies.
Right.
If you are struggling with cost and you have commercial insurance, there's always copay cards that are out there.
Yeah, which are also pretty helpful and they're useful. They actually work.
Yeah. If you have no insurance, zero insurance at all, you can actually go to these drug companies, and all of them you can get their insulin for $35 a day. You have to vouch and fill out a form that shows that you don't have insurance, and then they basically give you this voucher card that you print off from your computer and go to the pharmacy, and you can get that. That $35 is almost as good as the Walmart Rely On price. So if $35 is still too much, you can get $24-ish at Walmart. But those are going to be your N and your R, so your older insulins, ones that peak, ones that cause more lows.
And if you have really low income, some of the companies, NovoCares, LillyCares, they can actually supply insulin for free.
Yep.
You have to go through your provider. There's an application that has to be filled out. But I've had many patients who have gotten some of these medications covered for the year by filling out the application. So it actually does work as well.
Yeah. And that's not just for your insulins. That's for many of the type 2 medications and type 1 medications. So the insulin. And you can start it if you Google Lilly Cares patient assistance packet. That information can pop right up. And again, later on, maybe I've got some of these links that I can add to this. We're happy to share these. There's so many good programs out there. So the last thing that we want you to do is not get your insulin due to a price. So just reaching out to a provider, reaching out to us, we can give you that information so that you can continue to get the care that you need.
Exactly.
And Kathy, it says you've not been able to exercise for the past several months. So yeah, that could definitely increase the amount of insulin that you would have to use if you're not being as active as you were before. So that can definitely happen.
Well, if you're watching this later on and not live, you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below.
Yes. Yeah, let us know what they are. We are more than happy to answer any additional questions. Otherwise, you guys, this is our last Facebook Live for this year. This is our last one for 2022. So enjoy your holiday season. We are definitely going to enjoy it, and we have some exciting things planned. So stay tuned.
Bye, everyone.